Hey everyone, for this video, I'm going to cover a hand that I think illustrates a very important concept, which is knowing when to bluff. This hand happened on ACR the other day, and I'm going to review the hand, but first I wanted to play the hand for you guys so you got a good idea of what happened, and then we're going to talk about how it brings up this concept of knowing when to bluff your combo. So let's go through it right now. We can mix some calls here, but gonna 3-bet this time. So we 3-bet jacks, button versus cutoff. Strongest hand that we do call button versus cutoff. And then we get 4-bet. Past me also recognizes this. There's much shoving versus the cold 4-bet. King high board, obviously not great. They should be range betting here for the small sizing. So I mentioned that they should be range betting for the small sizing, which means typically if villain is using a small sizing, we're in position and we have any kind of hand that is going to be ahead of some of the weaker parts of their range, we're going to continue. So I do think that jacks with the club is a much more easy continue. But jacks without a club was probably close in continuing here. Having position does help a lot, as like I mentioned, I think the small blind is going to have a range bet here. We can call once against the small sizing. We prefer to have clubs. In fact, this might even be a fold at this point. So past me also recognizes that. I think it's still ahead of a lot of their cold 4-betting range of like ace high. They can 4-bet tens. So this is the first interesting spot of the hand. Once villain checks on a club turn, there are going to be a lot of hands we're still ahead of. Hands like ace queen, ace 5, ace jack suited, perhaps there's one combo of that. That doesn't have a flush, of course. And yeah, not too many combos we're ahead of here. And like I said before, something like pocket tens, if they do cold 4-bet that hand at some frequency. So this is one of those scenarios where I think we're mostly going to be checking. I don't think I want to be turning to this hand into a bluff yet. So I think we get to see a river now. Perhaps this is a small bet frequency. Really hate that river. Ace queen got there, you know. Clubs got there if they have tens with a club. I really don't beat much of anything now. So that realization right there, when I mentioned I don't really beat anything, should have been my first indication that I should be turning my hand into a bluff. Because like I said in game, ace queen suited got there, which is a big part of their cold 4-betting range. They're going to have hands like ace king without a club. They're going to have hands like king queen suited with 2 pair. They're going to have hands like pocket aces with no club. A lot of hands that are not feeling great about facing an all-in shove or even a large bet here on the river. And like I said, if they did have something like pocket tens, we are ahead of them. However, it's possible that they bluff those hands, right? Like if I have something like ace king or pocket jacks like I do here, tens is incentivized to bluff. So when villain checks here, it's safe to assume that there's going to be a lot of hands in their range that are going to be, you know, really uncomfortable facing a river bet. And if they do have something like ace queen, I don't think they're going to find too many hero calls. If they have something like ace king no club, they're in a really tough spot. Even pocket aces no club is in a really tough spot. It's also a spot where I don't think a lot of players are going to naturally find too many bluffs as the button here, because we did call a cold 4-bet, so the ranges are very tight. We 3-bet ourselves and we got cold 4-bets, so the cold 4-better range is really tight. My calling range for facing a cold 4-bet is going to be maybe a bit wider than the cold four better, but it is going to contain a very narrow range on this particular texture that doesn't have some kind of good equity. So, for example, a lot of our continuing range is going to be suited ace highs that we're continuing the flop with. So we're going to have some flushes like ace jack suited, ace five suited, ace 10 suited, etc. We're going to have some king X combos. So we're going to have a lot of hands that have top pair. And then we're going to have pairs with a club that continues. So like pocket jacks and pocket tens, pocket aces. We're going to have a lot of like really strong hands here. So the fact that we get to the river with a hand that doesn't have a flush, doesn't have even second pair. This is an under pair to the second pair. Makes this hand a very good candidate for turning into a bluff. But I did realize that I don't beat much, and I don't know exactly why I shortly after just checked back. Oh, I did play with the bet sizing there. So that does mean I was thinking about perhaps putting a bet in. So don't get much better to fold other than a queen. And then I mentioned that I don't get much better to fold other than a queen, which is not true. I didn't fully think this through. I didn't think about their pocket aces with no club. I didn't think about their ace king with no club. I didn't think about their pocket queens, right? I didn't think about all of the really strong parts of their range that don't have a flush, because those are the ones that we would be attacking. And those are the ones that are going to have to make some big folds. So if I can even get them to fold ace queen, even if they only have ace queen as a decent part of the range, that's still a big part of their range that they're going to have to fold by the river when I have pocket jacks. Do I want to turn this into a bluff? I have worse. I have way worse that I can turn into a bluff. And then I say I have way worse that I can turn into a bluff, which we're going to find out shortly if that's true. And villain shows pocket aces, and we lose the pot. So this is a spot where I uploaded the hand the next day, and it said that our non-river bet was a huge mistake. So a big EV loss here from GTO Wizard. And so I'm going to go over this hand now. First off, the pre-flop action is solid. It's going to be either a call or a 3-bet. I think I mentioned that in game. We get 4-bet, and we call the cold 4-bet. So far, so good. Facing a bet, I am supposed to do a lot of folding. Like I mentioned before when talking about this spot, jacks with a club is significantly better in a cold 4-bet pot. King high boards are really good for the cold 4-better. So even if they did cold 4-bet something like king queen suited, which is one of the weaker hands in their range, ace king offsuit, which is another weaker hand in their range, they hit this board. And then pocket queens, pocket jacks, pocket tens might be the worst hand that they cold 4-bet in this scenario. So jacks is not really doing well against an entire cold 4-betting range on a king high board. If the board was something like 10 high, I think that would change things significantly. We would be able to continue a lot more. But because of the king high board texture, we have to be a little picky about our continues here. So a lot of folding, but calling is still not a mistake. It's fine to continue. And then once villain checks on the small blind, on the turn, on the club turn. So this is a good check. I think at this point we are, like I said, ahead of some combos of ace queen suited, ace five suited, maybe ace jack suited, of diamonds or pocket tens. So I think that this check back is good to see river. And then once this queen comes off, you'll see that small blind checks, and this is where our big mistake is. So look how big of an EV difference it is between checking and betting. This is a huge opportunity to turn our hand into a bluff. And let's take a look at the range a bit closer now. So if we take a look at our strategy by the river after the small blind checks, we'll see that we do in fact have some worse pocket pairs. However, a lot of those worse pocket pairs have a club in them, right? A lot of our pocket pairs with a without a club are folding, surprisingly, to a c-bet. So if you take a look at something like pocket nines, no club, we're almost pure folding this combo. Same thing with pocket sevens, pocket sixes, pocket fives. So in reality, jacks is actually jacks and pocket tens are two of our worst hands that are going to get to the river with out of club. Because once we're at the river, you'll see that all of those low pocket pairs with a club now made a flush. And so if we take a look at our trash hands, the worst possible hands we can make it to the river with are going to be some floated ace highs. So some ace highs with backdoor hearts, which floated the flop light, or ace three suited with a pair. Ace queen suited, which is going to also float. And then pocket jacks, something like another backdoor heart draw. But even the ace queen is looking to bluff here. So hands as strong as a queen are going to turn themselves into a bluff. So pocket jacks is going to be, if we, don't have tens by the river, one of the core bluffing hands in our range. And then again, it's a lot of looking at how tight the small blind range is for checking the river, how, our range lines up on this queen of clubs. But if we take a look at the trash hands, these are going to be where our bluffs are going to come from. And so we missed out on an opportunity to bluff here. So in game, when I was thinking, well, I don't really beat much on the river, I think that was pretty accurate, because if we take a look at all of Villain's checking range here, you'll see there's a lot of, King X in their range, which we're losing to. Ace King, Ace Queen now just got there. Ace Jack of Diamonds was one of the few hands that I think I beat if they do check the river. And what else? I think Ace 5 if they ever check with that. And that's it, really. We're only really beating something like Ace 5 and Ace Jack once that queen hits, because like I was saying, the Ace Queen gets there, all of the King X combos get there, and Villain is bluffing tens. So Villain's not going to be checking tens out of position here. They're turning their hand into a bluff in an equilibrium. So checking back jacks is a disaster. And it's a hand that we need to kind of think about, okay, well, if this is Villain's entire range for cold four betting by the river, how often is my hand going to win? And if you come up with the idea that you're not going to win if you're not beating very much of their range, then highly consider turning your hand into a bluff. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, please like and subscribe if you'd like to see more of this kind of content.